Joining me now, Congressman Krishnamoorthi, Democrat from Illinois, member of the Oversight and Intelligence Committees. Congressman, good to see you again. Thank you for joining us. So the president did not directly order a criminal investigation. He ordered a review of the conduct of Chris Krebs as well as Miles Taylor. Could this, though, potentially lead to a criminal investigation? And if so, what would be the charges? Krebs merely did his job. Taylor exercised his free speech rights. So what are the charges?
I don't know, but that doesn't mean that they won't bring them, even if they're unfounded. Unfortunately, this is just another example of targeting people's free speech rights, their free association rights, their constitutional rights in this case. And what did he say that bothered Donald Trump? He said that the 2020 election was valid. And so this Trump election denialism still runs rampant through this administration. In the particular case of Krebs and Taylor, I hope that they will pursue their legal remedies and vindicate their rights. But let's call this for what it really is, which is it's kind of a new McCarthyism, going after people for what they say, going after law firms for who they're representing. And just like McCarthyism and the Nixon enemies list before, people have to lift up their voices and multiply their courage together in shining a light on this and making sure this backfires eventually on these guys.
Well, in fact, Congressman Jim Himes, your ranking Democratic colleague there on the Intel Committee, said this, quote, that Donald Trump would wield the Justice Department against Krebs for such an act represents yet another chilling step towards authoritarianism. I mean, what sort of chilling effect could come from this?
That's right. I think that this is not just about the case of Krebs and Taylor. It's a message to everyone else in the administration now who might even contemplate being a truth teller or a whistleblower or calling the facts for what they are. The fact of the matter, however, is that now we need more people more than ever to do their jobs, whether they're in the intelligence community or otherwise, to tell the truth, to make sure that, whether it's with regard to a national security threat, such as the Chinese Communist Party and their hacking attempts at critical infrastructure that have surfaced this past week, or whether it's with regard to domestic issues. And so what Donald Trump is doing right now is trying to stomp dissent. That is very dangerous for us.
There is a new report, it's exclusive in the Wall Street Journal, which says that Chinese officials acknowledged in a secret December meeting that Beijing previously hacked into U.S. infrastructure systems, adding that Chinese hacking is among the most troubling security threats facing the Trump administration. Congressman, you are the ranking member on the Select Committee on Strategic Competition between the U.S. and the Chinese Communist Party. Why is China suddenly admitting this? I mean, what's the bigger picture that we might be missing?
Well, first of all, just to give you a sense, basically, they had an operation called Volt Typhoon, where they basically pre-positioned malware in critical infrastructure in different places in the U.S., which they would use to disrupt that infrastructure. Think about shutting down the power or lights in an entire city in the event of a conflict. This is an attempt to basically say to the U.S. that, hey, if you don't do as we wish, we have tools to harm you. Of course, this tells me two things. One, this is all the more reason why you need the most talented and skilled people atop our national security establishment. And that's why it's so troubling that Trump would go after Krebs and Taylor and others based on maybe not towing the line in terms of what they say about him. They should be more worried about guarding our national security. And then two, this is potentially an act of war if something like this were to happen. So we have to make sure that we do everything we can to deter them and to prevent such a situation from arising.
Also, Trump shared this on social media on Wednesday, hours before he announced that 90-day delay on tariffs. And Democrats are now calling for an investigation into whether members of Congress might have engaged in insider trading. And here's your colleague, Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez.
I don't think that it was a coincidence. I don't think that Trump just coincidentally said buy stocks, and then shortly later made an announcement that dramatically inflated and dramatically raised a lot of these asset prices. And, you know, I've heard murmurings on the floor that there may have been people that knew that this was coming.
I'm curious what you, sir, are hearing. Do you think this should be investigated, or the fact that Trump put this out there, and it was out there for the world to look at and read for about 4 hours, does that absolve any concern of insider trading?
No, it doesn't, because remember, the question is who had inside knowledge of the tariff announcement before the world actually knew about it, and did they trade based on that knowledge? And I think that there's ample evidence or ample suggestion to believe that an investigation is warranted. We need to figure out whether there was market manipulation and whether there was insider trading. But that's kind of scoping out. I think the bigger issue is I have legislation to ban the trading of stocks by members of Congress. That's what we should do. We can't allow members of Congress or anyone to trade individual stocks, because they are always privy to some information that the public doesn't know. And in this case, of course, I believe that people did know, and I did hear similar murmurings on the floor. And I'm concerned that this further fuels the cynicism and distrust of the institution. And we got to end this right now.
Okay. Unfortunately, this conversation will end right now, but I know I'll see you again soon. Thank you very much, my friend, Congressman Raja Krishnamoorthi.